Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to today's Lunchtime Byte. We have the privilege today to welcome people from the property sector. So thank you to Lee Featherston who invited me to be part of this panel. So Property Foundation is a charity trust which is looking after the property industry, and one of the strategic pillars is to build awareness of the value of a career in property and to demyth the fact that the only people that work in the property market are real estate agents. So how we're going to today is that we're going to welcome a panel. We've got three, Lee, that is from the Property Trust, and Stephen Dunlop from Seville's, Joe Harris from Kiwi Property, and Cass Maya from Wilson Parking, and we're going to run it a bit like a panel. So I'm going to open the floor to Cassidy and Joe and to Stephen to just talk maybe for 3 or 4 minutes around where they work, the kind of work that they do, and also how they kind of got into this industry. And then I've got a few questions that I'll put forward to them, and then we will open it to the floor so that people can mic and they can ask questions directly to either Cassidy, Joe, or Stephen. So thank you, Stephen. Sorry about the confusion with the between the Google Meet link and the Zoom link. So so I'll open the floor now and I'll hand it over to Cassidy if she wants to start. Focusing on, where you work, the work that you do, and how you got into the work that you are doing currently.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, I'm Cassidy. I work at Wilson Parking. I promise, we're actually good people. So what's kind of really cool about what I do is I kind of get to do it all a little bit. So I look after our car park assets from start to finish. Um, Contrary to popular belief, we don't actually own all of our car parks. We lease most of them. So my job primarily is keeping the relationship with the landlords and with the people that we lease from. On top of that, it's right through from noticing a brand new site and saying, oh, I think that this could do really well. There's a gap in the market. People are struggling to find places to park. There's not enough street parking and you can't just go park on private property. So there's a need for parking. So I'll maybe find open land there and I'll say, oh, look, I'll reach out to the landlord, say, how much money are you wanting? Or what works with you? What works with us? What can we do? What can you do? And we work out an arrangement, and I do the financial analysis and everything to kind of understand if it will work out. And then I negotiate and I open up a car park. So that's sort of the opening section of it. And then from there, I keep the relationship going, have the coffees, get to know them, answer any inquiries along the way, solve any issues. But I also track the financial performance. So if it's not doing so well, what can we do to make it perform better? I get to do sometimes cool little projects like, oh, maybe we get a coffee cart in there or a billboard in there, or maybe we do something fun with it. And on top of that, handling things like rent reviews. So if, every year, typically when you have a rental on commercial property, every year there's in the contracts, there's a set amount that it'll go up by, whether that's matching the CPI inflation or anything like that, or a fixed amount. And then if it's not performing too well, we're at the end of the term of the contract, or if it's on a month to month. We've tried everything. It's not performing nicely. The landlord doesn't want to decrease the rent. Then we might just close the car park, or I might come up with an exit strategy to kind of, say goodbye to it. So that's kind of a high level overview. There's all the fun things that I get to do, like the networking events, the social events. The next 2 weeks, I've got back to back to back meetings, just having coffees and lunches with the landlord. So it's really every day's different. How I got into the industry, I worked in every industry beforehand. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was one of the people who went to a high school career advisor, settled on the hospitality industry, and studied at Queenstown Resort College. When I started doing my internship during that, realized that's not what I wanted to do. And so I did a whole bunch of contract work, so 6 months covering maternity leave in different industries, and realized I really like a mix of in and out of office work, networking, not quite customer service, but still kind of with people. I like numbers. I'm a weird one. So I just kind of talked to a whole bunch of people in different industries, and property kind of ticked all my boxes, and then that's how I ended up taking the degree in property. Yeah, I think it's the
Awesome.
best. Yeah.
Thanks, Cass. And yeah, that was a really good overview. And Joe, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the work that you do as well.
Yeah, sure. I'll come at it from a little different angle. I had never worked in property. I am an executive at Kiwi Property Group, and I've been with them for 4 years. So I joined Kiwi Property and property as an industry because what I realized was how dynamic and people-centric a property environment can be. It was so much more varied than I thought of. Just like you said, you have these perceptions of what property is. And Kiwi Property, the things that attracted me to the role and the industry was simply that it's all about building places where people come together. And that's a really important part of our strategy and what we do as an organization. So Kiwi Property is well known for some of the assets that it owns and manages. So it's a develop, own, manage organisation. It's most well known for Sylvia Park and the retail asset footprint. So Sylvia Park and Linmore, in particular in Auckland and the base and Centre Place in Hamilton, and then a couple of other properties further down the country. It also has some office block offices in those portfolios, and it's really all about looking at how do you maximize the environment for the benefit of the community and all of those involved that sort of dwell in that site. It also is building new townships. So Drury is obviously that flagship, greenfields development at this stage. We will be building a township over the next, 10, 20, 30 years on the land that we own there. And it's amazing to think, if you think back to Sylvia Park, I sort of, that's a 30-year history, and it was just unused land that has been repurposed and developed into what is, the leading shopping centre in New Zealand today, with 30 million customers going through our assets every year. So this sort of gives you a little bit of a flavour for Kiwi Property and property, as we see it. And what was your other question? Did I cover everything?
Yeah, I think that's a good start. And then I can come back with more
You can come
specific
back with some more
questions. Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. So
No
thank you,
worries at
Joe.
all.
And I'm going to hand over now to Steve, just to talk about, where you work and your role within that, and kind of a little bit about the company and what they do. Just on Moot.
There we go. Well, I'm clearly not here to talk about IT because I've had a bit of a shocker getting in today. And thanks very much for the opportunity to join the forum. And I suppose to start with, I'm a registered property valuer. I work for a company called Savills, which is one of the large 5 corporately owned property consultancy companies with a global footprint. I think we're in, at the moment, about 158 countries. Size is somewhere between 35,000 and 40,000 people. So it's one of the smaller of the large listed groups, domiciled out of London. We, in New Zealand, we have an office in Christchurch and Auckland, and roughly about 70 people plus people that manage malls and so on, that I can't take that number today. When I say it's a property company, but it's multidisciplinary in relation to having valuation, sales, leasing, property management, and facilities management are probably the mainstay at the moment. Each of those are very disparate or different role. I suppose property is the context, but people and communicating and dealing with people is what the game is. And so for all of these things, and pretty much Cassidy and Joe touched on the same thing, the broad number of people we interact with and so on is what really makes the job quite interesting. I'll talk a little bit around valuation first because it's the one that's closest to my heart. It's served me very well as a career. I've started in 1996, and that puts us to 30 years this year. Still feels like yesterday. Joe talking about a shopping center coming out of the ground and developing to, what is it now, $2 billion worth of assets. That was happening at the time I was starting my career. So it sort of puts it in context. And so I guess I am getting old. I've had a varied number of opportunities from doing rating valuations in the very beginning of my career, which is helping to set a tax base for local body rating, through to traveling throughout the South Pacific and Australia for work. And it's taken me to a number of different countries, a broad number of asset classes. And if we were trying to explain to somebody what the role is and whether they might be suited to it, it's investigation, analysis, assessment, and reporting would be the main items that one might do. And in that, the investigation can be anything from having to have touch points or data points on talking to real estate agents, digging information up, traveling around. The analysis part is kind of like puzzle solving for a living. And then likewise, the assessment element of it. And then the communication is both written and verbal. Being able to represent your written report in person is key to the trust of most of your clients. And I'd say if we're looking to the sort of student that thrives in the space, would be somebody that's probably quite good at both the sciences and the languages, as in it's not an all-rounder altogether, and it takes all sorts to make the world turn, but really somebody that is can't write a paragraph, but they can tell you pi to 200 decimal points. Probably it's not their gig, but there are roles for those people. And then and people that just love to read, well, there is a role for them, but having an understanding of the mathematical side of matters is pretty important as well. Now, I've got colleagues. Did you want me to run straight into how I got into it? It wasn't by accident. But...
Yeah, we can go down that, and then I'll come back to the girls. Yeah.
Okay. Or we don't have to. I mean, I basically just chanced upon it. A friend was complaining that his degree was all about money, and I was doing a Bachelor of Arts in philosophy at the time, and pretty much we changed lives that day, afternoon in the pub, and everything he described sounded like there might be a job in it, and everything that I described was interesting. And he went on, and he's become quite successful doing human resources, and I've moved on to running a number of valuation practices and having a very fulfilling career. But I'll pass back to Cassidy and Joe.
Oh, just before you go, Stephen, where did you study?
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. So there are 3 property-related schools in New Zealand, Lincoln, Massey, and Auckland, and I studied at Auckland. I've currently got 2 sons studying the same course at Auckland, not by my choice, that was theirs. And I've got a long association with the property school, and just have done a bit of guest lecturing. They haven't asked me for a while, so I can't be that good. But it was a very well-rounded degree, and 3-year bachelor degree.
Awesome. And Joe, we didn't really touch on where you've come from, how you got into this kind of work with Kiwi Property.
No, I've obviously come in from a different angle as I lead the people function here at Kiwi Property Group, and also pick up some, I suppose, more general management responsibilities from a governance perspective. So my background is more through I suppose, a human resources pathway, and a change management pathway, and I've worked in both public and private sector. So I what I know and what I love about, this industry and why it sort of makes sense is because it is, people do and can have really broad careers and backgrounds and find their way into property. And I suppose at the outset there's lots of perceptions around what property is. And I think, where I sit now, what I realize more than anything is that there are many different pathways and really well-rounded skills that make people successful in property. I think the other main reason why I was so committed to joining Kiwi Property is because one, I love the idea of growing of that people focus, so growing communities and growing places where people come. In the role that I have, I believe that I can advocate for more women in property and women growing. It's renowned to be a male-dominated industry, and I think coming in, especially in the role that I do, I have that opportunity to, how do I change that? How do I change that for our company, and how do I change that for an industry? And so working with different foundations and people, you start to change, you start to sort of raise awareness and change the perceptions and create pathways for people that wouldn't have even known or considered. What I saw and observed coming in, it's really common for people, to join the industry if they know someone who works in property. And there are a lot of other people, that would be so well suited to property. I think the other part, so that we need more women in property and women in senior roles in property. And I think, especially in an organisation like ours, I think, how do we, we have a commitment for our workforce to reflect the communities that we serve. And because we're not just about building and developing, we're also owning and operating. And if you think about retail centre management, we have people on the ground that work day in, day out in operational roles running a shopping centre. I believe that we should have, people working in property that truly reflect and understand, the customer at the end of the day. And, having that diversity is, one of the key reasons why I've joined the industry at a time where I think actually we're doing lots of great things and we can do more. And how do I advocate for that? So that was a key driver of me joining Kiwi Property.
Okay, I had some set questions, but they've a lot of it's been answered in the conversations that we've had. But one thing I'm really interested from each of you is, if you were your 15 or 17-year-old self, what would you do at school to prepare for a career in property? What subjects would you take? Do you think would be maybe useful? What kind of attributes would you build, or skills that you would build to be able to be successful, or even the extracurricular stuff that we encourage young people to do? What do you think would be good to do if you were going to be successful in a career in property? I'll go with you, Cassidy, first.
It's interesting that you say that. So I guess it might be different for others, but in my mindset, apologize for the wobbliness. My stand isn't very. It's from Temu. So I guess from my perspective, it really depends, because the property industry honestly could be for everyone, because there's something for everyone in it. Whether you're somebody who likes to interact with people, or whether you're someone who just wants to sit behind a desk and run numbers all day, there is really something for everyone. So that was one thing that really surprised me coming into the property degree, right? Was how many opportunities there are, and how many people could suit these different opportunities, right? And if you think about it, even careers that are, broadened like Joe's, with, Joe could probably bring her career into many different industries. but our industry also has it. So like accountants, and we have our human resources, and we have recruiters, and we have, so really to specify, I guess in my role, or maybe a good chunk of roles, a really good thing to work on is people skills, or being able to interact and network. Networking is really important. I think one really cool thing about this industry is that you meet all walks of life, because everybody is in a building, right? Every company has some form of building most of the time. Sometimes they're online, though these days they're even having virtual buildings, right? And on, like, I think IWG does some virtual office spaces, and everybody lives in a home. So everybody is connected to property. So you form connections in every industry. And so I think that people skills are probably like the most rounded one that would cover off every role, I would say. But to be honest, there's even roles where you don't have to interact with people if you're an introvert that doesn't want to. So analytical can really help. I think being able to work on your analytical skills could be really helpful as well. Math, if you want to go down the math route, but to be honest, as long as you learn Microsoft Office and Excel pretty well, that'll kind of cover your bases, unless you're in a more specific math focused role. Outside of those things, I would say you probably, the best way to know how to enter the industry is to understand yourself. Do I prefer to interact with people? Do I like numbers more? Do I like writing reports more? What do I like more? And then take a career from there and go from there. Because really the industry is so broad. It's for everyone, depending on the role.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Joe, do you want to add anything?
Mute. Yeah, I think I mean Cassidy really honed in on the people and the relationship skills. And I think Stephen even mentioned that as well earlier. There is a large part of property which is very relationship oriented. And those are general broad skills that you can start building, leadership skills from day one. And I think demonstrating leadership and people skills and relationship building is just that generalist skill set that I think you see in a lot of roles within property. And I equally agree with the analytical skills and, Stephen, you solving puzzles. I mean, there is a lot of problem solving and working through problems in constructive ways for win-win outcomes that happens all of the time. So, what I see is that you usually would be quite numeric, for a large chunk of types of roles within property industry, but you really are successful when when that's combined with those strong leadership, thinking, problem solving skills.
Brilliant. And Stephen, just anything to add to that?
Oh, yeah, I think they nailed it. If anything, I'd say my younger self, ensure you keep your topics at school broad. Narrowing in too soon, you're not quite sure where you're going to end up. Say, for example, you had an interest in property. Any number of pathways you might find that favors you. I think in a post-AI world or an AI influenced world, the personal skills and networking is going to become much more important. As in, if you have, you can automate a number of the analytical processes, being able to have good judgment as to what they mean, and then to be able to convey that to someone would be important. And if there was going to be some advice to a younger person today who, knowing my own sons that are about the age that we're talking about, is making sure they get on the phone and talk to people. Don't just text and so on. Unfortunately, in business, a lot of it still comes down to being able to express yourself and tell both good and bad news and all the challenges that come with that.
Yeah, great. Excellent. I'm just conscious of time. Lee, I just wondered if you wanted to do an overall, and then I'll open questions from the floor. just on mute, Lee.
Thank you, Lee. I'll be very brief because I think Astro and Steve have really covered all the main ground. I think it's important to realise that I keep saying this, that the property industry is the largest industry in New Zealand. It employs something like 230,000 people, accounts for 15% of GDP. And it's kind of like this giant that isn't well known, as well known as it should be. And whilst Cascio and Steve have been talking about kind of executive level roles and management level roles, it's important to also remember there are an awful lot of technical roles available in the property industry, which I think Joe touched on, talking about retail centre managers. Office buildings, for example, are um, really complex pieces of equipment. They're run by computer programs now, and there are a lot of technical roles that are available for people to manage how properties actually operate in real life. And the same with Wilson Parking's car parks and some of the buildings Steve looks after. So it's not just about office driven roles. It's about a variety of roles in New Zealand's largest industry. And there are 3 universities that really feature in property. That's Lincoln, Massey, and Auckland. They've kind of got overlapping degree courses in terms of how they're biased and featured. But I think for those types of students that are outgoing, good nascent people skills, and are numerical and analytical, they should be looking at property as something to consider.
What about in relation to entry level? Like not everybody wants to go down a university pathway. So for people that maybe can start and progress through, are there opportunities for those young people?
I think it's probably a question Joe could best answer.
Yeah, Joe, how do you?
Yeah, I absolutely can answer that one. So where I see those opportunities in, I suppose, organisations like Kiwi Property, but I know it's industry as well, is asset management is a really, really common environment. So asset management is, if you think about that in our footprint, but it can apply to other industries where you have that centre operations team that is actually there to ensure the operations of a shopping centre, for example. It could be another big organisation or asset. So there would be roles in there that are around facilities, around dealing with the shop owners and the tenants and, accounts and following up accounts and customer service and marketing and promotions and, and reporting and so lots of different roles. And we have lots of entry level roles in our assets and in our centres. And then I suppose the other area that I would see more entry level roles, not traditionally through that property pathway, would be, and I suppose all of the adjacent services that are part of a company. So whether it's accounts, whether it's front of house, whether it's administration roles. I mean, all of those normal roles are in larger property companies. Having that foot in the door through that opens your eyes to other roles that could be more property specific, but then you can create your own pathways of how you develop the experiences that are required. It's there are some key roles where you would say, yes, you would expect someone to be having a property degree, but what I'm seeing more and more is that is less so, for some of those more operational and technical roles that you can come through different pathways.
Excellent. So I think we'll open to the floor now. So you're very welcome to either put your questions in the chat and I can ask it on your behalf, or if you want to unmic and ask directly, then the floor is now open. Everyone's very shy. The other thing, just while people are thinking, and yeah, just pop your hand up so I can actually see because it's very difficult for me to see with lots of people on, which is fantastic. The other question that I was going to ask is around cadetships or internships or, areas where, or even, do your companies do gateway program where they can do work experience? How can people experience? Because we know that, from research that if they actually have a taste, then they may be more likely to enter that industry. So just wondering within each of your areas if there are any programs where kids can kind of, at a low risk environment, sort of have a taste of what the work that you do.
I I'll jump in and answer this one first because I've graduated university only, so Auckland University is the one I went to. I graduated halfway through last year. I was a mature student, well, mature in age, not necessarily mentality all the time. But so I graduated about halfway through last year, and I didn't do internships that existed in advance. I think this kind of ties into the people skills and what Stephen said about getting out there and calling people. I what's really cool, UOA, University of Auckland, was initially the only uni that did this, and now with Lee and the Property Foundation, they've extended this out to other universities. But my pathway was a little bit more unique. In terms of getting an internship when I got mine, was that I competed. They have an annual property case competition, and my team won the Auckland one. And so we got sent to New York to compete at one that Cornell University hosts. And I won't go into the end results. It was there was a wee bit of a dispute, but that's fine. But we did really well. But from that, I kind of put myself out there and kind of showed my skills. And I think that's really important, is putting yourself out there and not being afraid to try things. Because that's how I got noticed. In our coach, Chris Fahy, I said to him, look, I'm looking for internships. I'm looking for work. I want to start now. So that way, when I finish my degree, I've already hit the ground running. And so I kind of took that initiative, and I talked to him, and I put myself out there and did the competition. And I ended up getting two internships simultaneously. So one at St. Pierre's doing property manager. They needed somebody to come on and help move all of their paper leases onto the system, and just kind of anything that was thrown at me, which was a really good way to learn. I developed a new system, and in fact, I created the role and a whole handbook for the role. And then I also worked sometimes at Bailey's, just initially at the reception, but from that, I got to meet people from departments, and once again, put myself out there, said if your department needs anything, and I ended up helping out with project marketing, and trying to help market one of their projects. And then, yeah, from there, I ended up working at CBRE for some time, and then Wilson. And so by the time I graduated, I was at Wilson, and I had already had about 3 promotions, because I had about 2 promotions in CBRE, and then I moved over to Wilson, and my role's not an entry level role. So I had that before I even graduated. So really putting yourself out there, even if there's not an internship, for the right person, a company will create them. CBRE created me in a specific role. They didn't have an internship in property management, and they created it for me because they wanted to retain me. So if you put yourself out there, even if an internship doesn't exist, it can. So just put yourself out there, give it your all.
Okay, and just quickly, Joe and Stephen, have you, the internship, cadetship kind of programs available?
Do you want to lead, Joe?
Yeah, you go, Stephen.
Oh, okay. If I'm already off mute. Yeah, at Savills, we take about 5 students in their second year, leading into their third year as interns per year. They're paid roles, though, sort of part-time, 15 hours a week to work around the student study. Love to be able to offer more, because it's a fantastic way for the student to find out about the organization, and for you to work out if there's somebody who would be a good fit. But with the size of the organization at the moment and the right people to look after them, we're limited to about 5 in Auckland, and I think about 2 or 3 in Christchurch. So the opportunities do exist in different firms. I think the research division for CBRE is quite famous for giving opportunity with, I don't think it's the most glamorous job ever. young people walking into every lobby in the country to or around the city to check physical occupation on a given day. That's but every firm seems to strive to bring people through, and I think one of the things with a change of workforce coming, not to keep touching on AI, but one of the big challenges for every organization will be to make sure that they create pathways for young people to still come into their organizations. Because if software could replace those people, and the jobs they would usually do don't exist anymore, we're going to have to be a little bit creative on making sure that we don't grandfather the whole firm out with the people that already have the skills. We've got to keep on figuring out ways, and I think it's going to be a challenge for almost every profession, including the property profession.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And Joe, just briefly, because I've got a few questions in the chat now.
Yeah. No worries. So work experience is something that we can offer. So for high school students, so as part of their career taster day, and it just requires either someone reaching out to me, for example, or someone they know, and then me and my team enabling that. So we will have a number of students in any one year. I'm really committed to ensuring we can, support that at that grassroots level. Interns, yes, we do have interns. Again, we would have, it's not a traditional intern program. It's usually where we identify work and then we try and identify students and go out to, market to students for opportunities to come in. I am, just as Stephen was saying, in my role, again, I believe it's something that I have a responsibility to do to ensure that we continue to have students and people early on in their careers given an opportunity and exposure to network, to work with people and learn different skills. So we would have a number of people throughout the year at any one time, and I have at the moment 5 students who are now doing part-time work, either while they're studying, a little bit like Cassidy's experiences. They might come in, start doing something, and then end up doing something else. So it's reaching out. Cassidy's story was just gold, like using, just being brave and reaching out, using those opportunities of meeting people in a different situation, in a safe environment potentially, and using those networks and relationships to, get a foot in the door. And proving yourself is definitely well valued, and so keep on at it.
Excellent. Thank you. So one of the questions is probably, I'm interested in your thoughts, Stephen, is, often you talked about being subjects at school being broad, and a lot of young people think that they should do a broad degree rather than a specific property degree. So maybe do a broader commerce degree rather than a specific property. I suppose valuation is a little bit different, but what do you think about that? Do you think it's too specific property or
Yeah, it is a great question. And my experience is that both my sons started a Bachelor of Commerce and moved across to property, as they had a preference for not necessarily being narrowed to a specific role, as in they probably both won't become valuers, but more a case of it started to have a bit of some focus rather than the very broad. I think both of them had started a degree in economics, which it suits some people well, and I think somehow property just struck a chord with them. In terms of the opportunities in property, and I note Lee's comment about 230,000 people working in the space nationally. I'll give you some statistics on just the valuation sector. So at peak, there might have been 1,500 valuers in the country. Currently, about 850, 60% of which are over the age of 60 and still practicing through to their 80s, which is extraordinary. And I don't know why someone would do that to themselves. But they tend to, they build up a career and they tend to love it, and it's and some of them are as sharp as anything still. But we're currently getting about it's a bit of a challenging pathway because you do a 3-year degree, undergraduate degree, and then you need to be supervised by someone for 3 years, and then sit an oral exam, which is about 3 hours long and quite challenging. It's probably not quite as bad as doing the AFA, but it's you pretty much everything you've worked for about 6 years comes to a head on a given day, and nobody can fail, but you can only be deferred twice, and then you can't sit again. So it sounds a bit like failure to me. Just trying to give you a feel for that, we're getting about 60 people per year coming through, and that is fewer than that's going through to registration, and that is fewer than the number of people that are exiting the industry in that 60 to 80-year-old bracket that are either standing down or graduating in a different way. But so it's a sector that is in need of more people. As a result, people have been earning probably more than they deserve, and it is there's different aspects to the career, and so I'm really doing a push for my own profession here for a second, but different aspects to it. But I think the court work is probably going to be the last area. So doing dispute resolution support for lawyers is probably the last area of the industry that will disappear with AI. Basically, it's going to be some time before the judiciary decides to adopt it outright. And so there is probably a full career left for young people as I can see it now. So say someone with an outlook to say 20 odd years. And I guess I'm also just mindful when you're talking about narrowing. I know plenty of people that have bounced around between property management, valuation. They've gone on to become general managers of some of the LPT property companies, like Joe's company, and had very fulfilling careers from it. So I think whilst I say keep it broad, I think I'm really looking at just making sure that people don't narrow themselves to just languages or just the sciences or geography and history, but just trying to have a good number of data points to draw upon throughout that career so that they can chop and change as they need to and react to an ever-changing world.
Yeah, and I think that, it's really important. I think you raised some really good points there around that sort of very much those skills that we develop and that they can be transferable into numerous industries. And sometimes it's not necessarily the knowledge that we learn, it's the people skills, as you've all talked about, and the skills that we have as a person that we can offer a lot of these organizations. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. And thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be able to join with us. But I think it's important for us to be able to talk to young people around the various different options that are available out there in different industries, and to get people that are working there right now to be able to to hear from people. So thank you very much. Thanks to everybody who've taken up their either lunchtime or their free period to be able to be with us, and to any students that have joined us today as well. It's great to have you on board. So I hope that everyone's got from that. For those that are CATE members, I have recorded this, and so I will send out that recording. And if it's okay with Lee, I will put his contact details so that if there were more information that you needed. So Mary, I'm sorry, didn't quite get to your question, but I will forward that on to Lee and see if we can get something from the Property Trust around that might support you. So thank you, and we look forward to I'll see all the other members in our next lunchtime bite. And thank you to Lee, Joe, Cassidy, and Stephen.